All right, similar to LRZ, RC, I wanted to talk to you about Dante Miller, who is with the Giants and also had a unique path. I don't think he was on the IPP path, but definitely a unique guy transitioning into the NFL. RC, you want to give some background on Dante Miller?
Yeah, this story's interesting for Dynasty rookie drafts, NFL draft. It's a unique prospect, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about him. I did a full report on fantasy football metrics, but just to give it a little bit more kick, I wanted to talk about it in a video real quick. Just a very brief backdrop as to how Dante Miller arrived on my desk as a during this NFL draft scouting process. I had no idea he even existed. And then all of a sudden I got a report from the South Carolina Pro Day, and there's this guy that ran some said of mid 4.2s, others said low 4.3s 40 time. So if we just kind of split the difference and go, this guy ran a 4.3, that's pretty hot for any prospect, but especially a running back prospect, but then especially a running back prospect I'd never even heard of. So then I see the next piece of information I go and look at, and I'm like, well, is this guy like 150 pounds? Is he fast because he's small and slender and a track and field guy? No, he's 5'9", 190 pounds. He's a decent size. So I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting. Then I see he benched 28 reps on the bench press at 190 pounds running a 4.3. And now I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
That has to be, is that up there, RC, with the strongest running backs? That sounds like a lot.
I believe he would be the fastest running back at the NFL Combine. If you took him at a 4.3 or a 4.29, would have been ahead of Garendo. And his 28 bench press reps was one more than I forget who had the lead, but he would have been number one potentially in 40 time and bench press at 190 pounds. That's attention getting. So it certainly got the attention of the teams that were there, because that South Carolina Pro Day was loaded. Everybody was there to see Xavier Leggett and Spencer Rattler, especially among some other prospects that they had. But then this guy, really nobody had on their radar. I mean, legitimately nobody had on their radar. He was a backup for South Carolina, and I'll get into his backstory a little bit in a moment. But he blows away this pro day and sends everybody scrambling to try to figure out what's his story. Who is this guy? Why have we never heard of him? Why didn't he play for South Carolina? He only played 6 games for South Carolina in 2022, and he barely played in those games, and he didn't even play in 2023. So everybody's like, was he hurt? What was he suspended? Is this guy a problem? But he's not a problem. He graduated from Columbia University 2 years ago and graduate transferred to South Carolina. So he's no dummy. He's no issue off the field. So everybody's like, how in the world did this guy get here? We'll get to that in a second, but the Giants were kind of jumped on him first, and because he played at Columbia in the Ivy League in New York, when the Giants came calling, he was interested in going back to New York to play football, so they made him an offer and they snatched him right up. So that's how he became a Giant.
How does that work, RC? Like he was able to bypass the draft, and the Giants were...
Everybody was... and I think the Giants were just lucky enough to get in line first and maybe figure this out first. Everybody was scrambling to get more information on him to put him on their draft boards. But somebody figured out, and it may have been the Giants, a Giant scout that asked the simple question, like, when you find out his story, which I'll get into in a second, they're like, do you know if your guy, they called his agent, they're like, do you know if your guy is even eligible for the draft? Like, was he maybe eligible for last year's draft because of the circumstances? So one thing led to another, and sure enough, they checked with the NFL, and he was eligible for the 2023 draft and the supplemental draft, and he didn't know it. So, but we'll get into how he got to that. But I just wanted to put a quick um, uh, tape session note in, because once I saw this background, I'm like, oh, I got to go see this guy. And of course, he barely played at South Carolina. You don't have It's not easy to get good Ivy League tape from a couple of years ago. So I had to go scrambling and watched his work. And just as a scout, just what I want to say on Dante Miller, the speed seems to be real on the field. Sometimes these guys run super fast and you don't really see it on the field. Like Xavier Worthy ran that 4.21. I don't see a 4.21 runner when I watch Xavier Worthy. When I watch Dante Miller, knowing he's in the 4.3s potentially, maybe possibly the 4.2s, I could see it. There was, when he had the lane or the space, he was gone. So it's hard to judge against Ivy League defenders who are, almost none of them are even going to sniff the NFL. But it looked like from the first moment I put the tape on and watched his some of his breakaway runs, I'm like, okay, there's something here. When I was watching the tape and taking notes, he can catch the ball. He barely had caught any passes at Columbia, so I was like, well, maybe he's got terrible hands. That's why he didn't have big numbers. No, he can catch the ball fine. I would say that he has the speed, he has the agility. He didn't run a 3-cone or doesn't have a 3-cone time from the pro day. Like the movement skills are there. He doesn't look like the most instinctual. He doesn't look like he's very polished as a running back. He's more just get ball and run fast, which when you can run a 4.3, that's not a bad thing. But as I was watching more and more of his games at Columbia, of which his breakout season of 2021, he was a first-team All Ivy League running back, but the numbers weren't that great. He ran for like 82 yards a game and only had 4 rushing touchdowns and caught a handful of passes in 10 games. So I'm like, how in the world did he underproduce? But watching the Columbia tape, it could be that he just doesn't have the knack for playing football. That's debatable, but it's on the board as a possibility. But I would also like to propose the other possibility, which kind of opens him up to being, I don't think he's going to be drafted in the NFL, but he'll be a priority undrafted, or he would have been, I don't think he would have gotten himself drafted, but he would have been an undrafted free agent. Obviously, he's on the Giants already. But his watching the Columbia offense, they never got him out in speed. You'd figure if you had an athlete like that was starting to have breakaway runs, 50-yard runs all over the place, you would probably design some screen passes. You would get him some sweeps and get him the ball more. Columbia didn't seem to be interested at all in running him into the ground, like jumping on his back and riding him to, glory. He was in a mixed backfield in a committee. He didn't even start most of the games. He was, you could say he was a backup. He wasn't a backup. He was like a running back, and he ended up being a first teamer. But it wasn't like they were overfeeding him and putting him in position to be a success. He just had to kind of outrun defenses to make his hay, because the offense wasn't helping him at all. Very bad offense. And I've seen this. It's not like, oh, I'm going to pick on Columbia, I'm going to make an excuse for this guy. I see this a lot with D3 schools, FCS schools. They get super talented guys, and then the coaches come with their playbook from high school or wherever they came from, and they're going to run that playbook. So apparently Dante Miller wasn't really going to be a major part of the playbook. I would have taken one look at what he was doing as a coach, and I'm like, throw the playbook out, get this guy the ball as many times as we possibly can. But they did not do that. So that gives the allowance for wondering what would happen if a team and if he gets into the NFL, if they do put him in a position to succeed. So I'm not pounding my fist on the desk saying this is a prospect like I've never seen before, low level prospect that I've never seen before. Let's all get excited. We need to chase this guy. I'm more excited. So far in this series, we've talked about Luis Reese Zamet, the international player for rugby that was signed by the Chiefs. I'm more in what I've seen of him. I'm more thinking he's more NFL ready, more NFL interesting than Miller. But Miller's still interesting. But I'm on the fence of whether it's just this guy just doesn't have it as a running back, or was it that Columbia just held him back? So he goes to Columbia for 2 years, first 2 years of his career. He's a backup. Then COVID hits 2020 when he's going to become a starter. So he loses that season. Then in 2021, as a senior, he has his fourth year. He has a breakout season, his first team Ivy Leaguer. In the Ivy League, I did not know this till I got deeper into this Miller stuff. The Ivy League, you get 4 years, whether you got COVID, whether you got hurt. There's no red shirting. There's no nothing. You get 4 years to play 4 years. And if you were a backup, or you tore your ACL, or you missed because of COVID, tough luck. You're out after 4 years. So he has his breakout year, but now he can't play any more football. So that's where he transfers to South Carolina. He goes to South Carolina because he wanted to go to the SEC, and South Carolina was the SEC team that was pursuing him. He wants to be an NFL player, so he's like, I'm a graduate of Columbia. I could go out and get a 6-figure job at the snap of a finger, but I want to be an NFL. I want to give it a shot at the NFL. So, and he goes, if I'm going to do that, I need to go to the best football conference there is and try to show my wares. That's how he winds up at South Carolina. He winds up at South Carolina in 2022, and he's behind then lead running back Marshawn Lloyd, who's a top running back prospect for this draft, who then went on to the other USC in California. But at the time, he was the lead guy for South Carolina. So Miller comes in as a backup, gets in for a couple touches, barely plays, but he plays a fifth game and a sixth game. He's told that he has 2 years remaining of eligibility at D1. Ivy League rules don't apply at D1. They're like, South Carolina tells him, you got 2 years to play 2 more seasons. So he's like, great, I'm going to come and I'll learn behind Lloyd, and, maybe 2023, I'll be the breakout running back. Well, partway in to his journey, they tell him, oh, wait, we made a mistake. You have 2 years to play you got 1 season left. You got 2 years to do it in, but you can only play 1 season. So he's like, wait a minute. I didn't know that. I'm going to redshirt. But the problem is that he already played a 5th and a 6th game. You're just allowed to play 4 games, and then you can still redshirt. He played a 5th and a 6th game, like 18 seconds and 10 seconds of a game, and that made him technically ineligible. So he appeals to the NCAAs. He's like, look at my circumstances. They had the COVID year in the Ivy League, and the Ivy League has their rules, and they told me I had 2 years and 2 seasons. Now they tell me I have 2 years to play 1 season, and now I'm halfway through that season. I would have redshirted 2022 had I known I only had 1 season of college play. So they're like, have mercy on me. So he decides, while they're waiting to hear his case, because they don't get back to him right away, while he's waiting to have his case heard, he just decides not to play anymore, like take himself out like a red shirt, and like, I'm not going to play anymore because it could ruin my plea to be a red shirt year. So he doesn't play at all for the rest of 2022. He still hasn't heard from the NCAAs whether they're going to grant him another year of eligibility. So he burns his 2022 season, comes up to 2023, he's working out with the team, all that, and then in summer camp, like June, July, they call him and tell him, sorry, you're ineligible. you can't play. You got no more years left to play because you played in that fifth and sixth game for a total of like 30 seconds. So the guy has had 3 seasons of his last 4 ripped away from him through no fault of his own, COVID and stupid and mistakes by South Carolina, and then the NCAA's having no heart whatsoever for the guy. So he has to sit out 2023 because the season's already go. Like, he didn't know he was even eligible for the draft or then the supplemental draft because the draft had already happened. So he wasn't even thinking about it. So South Carolina's all apologetic, and they let him kind of work with the team in 2023 to keep in shape because he's going to shoot for his pro day in 2024. That's how he gets to his pro day. And it's sad because he's a Columbia graduate. He gets his graduate degree from South Carolina, but he was given up by his mother when he was 2 years old, and he bounced in and out of foster homes, and then finally got adopted by a distant member of the family, and then worked his way from that background to get his way to Columbia and then go get his degree in the Ivy League and be a first team running back in 2021. He's got a great story. I don't know why the NCAA didn't give him the extra time, but unique story, certainly an eye-popping pro day talent. I'm on the fence of whether this is real or not, but he's definitely worth having on the board for dynasty rookie drafts in the later rounds, or some leagues he's a free agent. He is on the New York Giants right now. He is eligible to be picked up. So just wanted to put that pitch out there and give a little bit more juice behind the Dante Miller story.
Yeah, and RC, going into this, like, I didn't really do a lot of research on Dante Miller, but from what I'm getting from you, the kid's obviously fast. He's strong, he's smart, and he landed in a situation where obviously there's no Saquon Barkley now. Devin Singletary's the lead back. Now, we don't know what they're going to do in the draft, but if they come out of that draft and Dante Miller's the only running back that they get, then all of a sudden, there's a pretty clear path for him, and he has a pretty cool story. We don't know how that's going to pan out, but you can view it as a disadvantage that he didn't get all those college reps, but also, like, his legs are fresh. Like, if he's actually that strong and powerful and he gets he holds up, like, there's no miles on him. So, like, that's pretty good too.
It's a great point that you bring up about the Giants situation, because that's the other part of it that I'm going, he could have landed, pick a bad situation where he'd have been the 4th or 5th string running back trying to fight for oxygen. But landing on the Giants, it's Devin Singletary and really not anybody else that you're totally scared of, where he might not be able to get some extra touches. I'm sure the Giants are going to draft someone, but still that would put him maybe 3rd in the, whoever's the 3rd best running back is not that big of a threat to him to where he won't get touches. I'm sure they're going to try to use him as, on the new kick return situation. He's kind of built for that too. But this is going to be a story in the summer. It's the feel-good story of the summer because of his background of being in and out of foster homes. He's a New York. He played college football in New York. He signed with New York. I mean, there's a lot to root for here, and I'm sure it'll be one of the stories of the summer, especially around Giants camp, where there's not a lot of things to get excited about for the New York Giants. This will be one of them. So, yeah, I hope he finds a way to hit and carve out a role and go from there. But
I'm sure if he stays healthy, he'll have a decent usage in the preseason, and we can get a better read on him there. But for now, I guess we got to wait to see what the Giants do with the draft to see how valuable he is too. Because if they don't draft any running backs, which I would find a little weird, like that would really boost up his value.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on it to wrap it up for Miller, I have a full scouting report and the comps in our database that Miller is trending like in our system, in our proprietary comparisons. And then when we come up to this summer and the preseason, I will be getting reports from Giants training camp, and then we'll see what he's like. I'll be covering all the games in the preseason. So this is not the end of the Miller story. This is just the opening chapter.
That's awesome. Well, we look forward to that, RC. And for those of you that want more, check out FF Metrics. RC has the ffmetrics.com. RC has the full scouting report there, so you